Okie dokie. So welcome back. We are going to get into the last part of this section, which gets into circles. So specifically, we're going to be looking at the circumference and the area of a circle. Now, circumference might sound like a fancy word, but really all it is the perimeter of a circle. So anytime you see that word or hear that word, think perimeter of a circle. Now, because circles are unique, their formulas are going to be a little bit unique too. Now, we've talked about the variable pi. It's not a variable, it's a constant. But the constant pi, that's going to be needed to find the circumference. So we're going to be multiplying pi times d, which in this case d is the diameter. Or though, we could also know that the diameter is equal to twice the radius. So we can also have a different version of the formula. So 2 times pi times r. So they just swapped around the pi and the 2, so which is allowed. So again, you got your two variations of your formula. So like I said, if you know the radius or if you know the diameter. All right, so that's pretty cut and dry. But now for area, they typically only use one formula. They don't have one for the radius and one for the diameter. They just have one for the radius. So pi times r to the second power, so r squared. So let's just try a few problems. Given the circle with diameter of 10, find its circumference and its area. So again, if you want to draw a picture, you can, but you really shouldn't need to. So we just want to plug in pi times d. So that's going to be 3.14 times 10. Now, if they don't specifically state use the pi button on your calculator or something like that, typically they're going to want you to use 3.14. Or they might not say leave it in terms of pi. So you're not even going to take pi out of your answer. So in this case, if we multiply that, we're just going to get 31.4. Now, again, there's no units, so we don't need to worry about units on our answers. But when there are units, we do got to be careful. Now, so like I said, so 31.4 would be the rounded version of the answer. And like I said, if we wanted to leave it in terms of pi, then we would just say 10 pi. So, but typically they're going to want the numerical version. And now for the area, well, what do? Formula is pi r squared, and they're giving us the diameter. Well, if we know the diameter is 10, then the radius better be half of that. So the radius is going to have to be 5. So we got pi, which is 3.14, times r to the second power. Now be careful. Don't multiply first. Order of operation rules. So that means exponents go first. So 3.14 times 25, which is 78.5. So there's your answers. Not much to it. Let's try some more challenging ones. How about if we're given a circle with C equal to 37.68 and R is equal to x plus 1, find x. So let's just draw a picture here. So we have a radius, and it's x plus 1. And then the circumference is that. So what do? Remember, always start with the formula. So if we're talking about circumference and we're talking about circles and radiuses and stuff, let's put the right formula down. So we know that's our formula. C equals 2 pi r. So let's replace what we know. We know the circumference is that, so we can get rid of the c. We know pi is equal to 3.14. And we know r is equal to x plus 1. Now, we want to be careful with that, so let's put x plus 1 in parentheses, because it's a single quantity. So now we have a formula, an equation, that only has one variable in it. So now we just have to solve this. So let's start breaking down this side. What would you want to do first? If we wanted to start breaking this down. Well, you got two numbers that are multiplied together. Let's get rid of that. Let's combine those. So we got 6.28 times x plus 1. And so now, what should we do next? We got some parentheses, so let's get rid of those by distributing. So we got 6.28x plus 6.28. All right. Now we got to get rid of that 6.28, so let's subtract that from both sides. So that cancels those out. So this looks like 31.4 equals 6.28x. And then we can divide. So that's going to give us x equals 5. So again, always try to start with a formula. If you're stuck and you don't know where to start with a formula. Start with a formula that works for that particular problem. All right, let's try a couple more, and that will wrap up this section, if I can turn the page. All right, so we have, this is an interesting one. We have a circle inside of a square, and we have this dimension of 4 miles for a radius. And they want us to find just this shaded corner down here. Now remember what we said before. Area of the shaded is equal to the area of the outside, if I could spell, minus the area of the inside. So what's our outside shape and what's our inside shape? Our outside shape is this square, right? But our inside one is the circle. So how can we find the area of that outside shape? We need the dimensions of the sides of the square if we're going to be able to do that. So how can this 4 miles help us out? Now it's deceiving, but this 4 miles is put at an angle to try to trick you. What happens if we turned it sideways and went from here to here? That should still be 4 miles, right? And if we went over here, it should also still be 4 miles. So now, once we put them in line like that, that gives us the information we're missing. So we now know that this is 8 miles, which means that this is 8 miles. So now we can find the area of that square. So the area of the square is going to be equal to 8 to the second power, which is 64. And we'll even put our units on there too. So we have that. And now, what about our circle? If we want the area of the circle, then we just need pi r squared, right? So pi r squared, so 3.14 times what? What's our radius? Our radius, remember, is still the 4. So we got 4 squared. So we got 3.14 times 16. And I think that that's 50.24, if I remember correctly. Probably should check, though. Let's check just to make sure. 16 times 3.14 equals, yeah. Okay. All right, so we're making progress. But now we got to get the shaded part. So, well, can we just subtract these two values and call it a day? Well, if we said 60 point, oops, not 60 point, how about 64 minus 50.24, if we subtract those, it looks like we get 13.76. So is that our answer? Well, it's not quite our answer, because if we take out that circle, that's going to leave us all 4 corners, and we only want one of them. So what do we need to do to that number? Yeah, we got to divide that by 4. So if we divide this by 4, let's just make sure we get that right. 13.76 divided by 4 equals 3.44. So now we can see we get 3.44 miles squared. So there's our answer for that one. A little bit tricky, but again, try to compartmentalize it. Try to break it down into steps. So we started with this overall analogy, and then we started to break it down by pulling apart this picture and reconfiguring it. So that's what you got to do with these ones. Let's try a couple more, and that will wrap us up. So another shaded one. So same as before, outside and inside. So our outside shape is what? Our outside shape better be this rectangle, right? And then the inside shape, actually we have two of them. But the nice thing about this is that they're both the same size. So really, if we can figure out one of them, we just got to double it. So we got our area of the shaded is equal to the area of the outside minus the area of the inside. Okay, so we got to get our area of a rectangle. So what are the dimensions of that rectangle? So we got our one dimension here, which is 74. And then how long is it all the way across the bottom? Better be the same as all the way across the top, right? So we have 48 and 48, which is 96. So we had 96 times 74, which, let's see what that is. Let me go over here, see a little bit better. 96 times 74, 7104. So 7104, and let's put our units in there too. It's always good to get in the practice of putting those units in there when they're in the problem. Okay, so we have that. Now we need to get a triangle. So what would be the dimensions of that? What's the formula? So remember, half base times height. So what's the base and height of your triangle? Well, we can kind of see 48 is across the bottom, and our dotted line in there is 36. So we got 48 and 36. So what's 48 times 36? 1728. And then if we take half of that, divide that by 2, 864. So now we got our triangle. So when we get into our formula, we just got to be careful. Remember, there's two triangles we got to put in there. So we want the 7104 minus 2 times 864. Well, 2 times 864 we already know is 1728. So we just have to subtract 7104 minus 1728 equals 5376, and then we'll put our units in there. And so that should be it. Again, it's a process. These ones are going to be a little bit of a thinker. So let's try one more, and then that wraps us up. A hotel is in the shape of a cylinder, so like a can of soup or something like that, with a circular foundation. The circumference of this foundation is 6 times the radius, increased by 12.88 feet. Find the radius of the circular foundation. Use 3.14 as approximation for pi. Okay, well, let's get a picture since they don't have one. The circle's a little lopsided, but it's okay. All right, so the circumference of the foundation is 6 times the radius. Now, we don't know what the radius is. That's what they want us to find. So if you want to call it X, if you want to call it R, let's call it R for radius. So where do we start? So we're talking about circles. So we got that much down. And we're talking about circumference of circles. And we know we're looking at radiuses, or radii, excuse me. So automatically we know this formula is going to have to be in play. C equals 2 pi r. But they also give us a different interpretation. the circumference of the foundation is, C is 6 times the radius. So 6r increased by 12.88. Increased by 12.88. We had a problem similar to this before. If you got two expressions that are both describing the same thing, you can set these two parts equal to each other. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to say 2 pi r is equal to 6r plus 12.88. And so now, well, we got to get rid of that pi and take care of all that business. So we got 2 times 3.14. R equals 6r plus 12.88. And then we can start to combine a little bit. Let's multiply those together. And then we got the right side stays the same. And now, a few more steps. We got the r's. Let's move the smaller one over. So we'll subtract 6r. Now, just to keep everything lined up, I added a couple of zeros there to the 6. So that doesn't change anything. So we got 0.28r equals 12.88. And then the last step is to divide. So let's see what that divides out to be. Hopefully it's nice. 46. So 46, and then what are the units on that? Because it's just a singular dimension, it's not an area, we don't need the exponent, so it's just going to be in feet. So 46 feet. Phew! All right, you made it through it. So now we can start to prepare for that exam. So stay tuned for videos on that. Take care.